G'day and welcome to Hanging with Hubert. Today we've got a special guest all the way from Brazil. His name is Josi Souza. He's from a company called Nogueira. Nogueira and ABC Hansen have partnered to start supplying some forage and silage equipment and also grain bagging equipment in South Africa and Southern Africa together with Nogueira. Josi, please tell us a little bit about Nogueira.
Well, thanks firstly for having me here. Nogueira is a Brazilian company which is located in the Itapira city in the state of São Paulo, Brazil. We manufacture 6 lines, and we have here our great partner, which is ABC Hansen. We employ 1,000 people in our plants, which is 25,000 square meters.
How long has Nogueira been in the business of animal feed equipment?
Well, Nogueira is on the market since 1957, so it has 68 years on the market.
68 years.
Yeah, and always producing machine for the animal feeding. So we have for example, our storage division, which is very important, and also the livestock divisions with our forage harvesters for feeding the animals.
So Nogueira's main focus is basically on animal feed systems and grain storage systems, so everything around that. It's a good place to be, because as we know, Brazil is the largest producer of beef cattle in the world at the moment. And so it just makes sense to get equipment from some place like Brazil, which has so much experience just in beef cattle production.
And it's 68 years always focused on it, what makes difference in the end,
Can you tell us a little bit, just break down, you said you have 6 main lines of equipment that you're manufacturing. What are those lines?
Well, basically, it's the livestock machinery line, which you have the forage harvester to harvest the forage and to feed the animals, okay? In this line, let me just talk a little bit about this line. We have the single row machines and the row independent machine to harvest all the forage, like maize, sorghum, and etc. That's just one of our line. After this, we have the second line, which is the storage division or storage line, with grain baggers, silage bagger, debaggers, and we have the fertilizer and seeds spreaders. We have the hay maker division with hay balers, hakes, and mowers, okay? And the stationary division with basically it's forage choppers, grinders, and etc. And in the end, but not last important, the feed mixer line with the feed mixers and the forage wagons.
All right. Let's talk a little bit where our focus is going to be in this conversation is mainly going to be on the forage harvesting and the silage bagging. So can you give us a little bit more details on the forage harvesters that you are offering?
Of course. Well, the animals, they need basically 2 things to produce more milk or beef, which is the fibrous material and the grains, which usually we call it the concentrate, all right? And as I said, we have the single row machine and the row independent machine, all right, forage harvester. And talking about it better, basically the single row, we're going to harvest one line at once, and the row independent, we can harvest the different lines at the same time. For example, 2, 3, depending of the working widget of the machine. Okay, and I just wanted to add that thinking about it, Nogueira is a company that think about the customer, think about the farmer, and thinking about this, we produce basically machines for the small scale farmer, the medium, and also the large scale farmer. Okay, and basically it's these to produce the the food for the animal. And all of the forage harvest of Nogueira has an important thing, which is the grain cracker, okay, which cracks the grain so the cattle can produce more milk or beef, because they going to take advantage of all the starch which is present inside the grain, okay. Once it's cracked, it can take advantage 100%.
That's great. Tell me, one of the things about the Nogueira machines is that you have such a flexibility on the size of that you are cutting with it on the forage harvesters, that you're cutting the material. So you can go from 4 millimeters up to 32 millimeter fiber lengths in this?
Well, good question. Good question. The machines of Nogueira has different chopping size. Okay, so you can choose. It has, for example, the FTN 1000 power, which is a row independent forage harvester. Sorry, it has up to 24 different chopping size, which goes from 2 millimeters and it go up to 36 millimeter, okay. And it's very good because you can adapt what you have to feed your cattle, independent of what it is. You know, you can feed with everything you have. You can cut into a small size when it's necessary, or you can cut it into a large size. You know, in the end, the cattle is going to eat everything that you feed them with. All right, and I want to add something about choosing the chopping size. Well, imagine that you have maize which is dry, so it is very dry. So with Nogueira forage harvest, you will not lose the crop. Why? Because you can choose the chopping size into a small size. What I mean is, if you feed, for example, a cattle or a cow, sorry, with a large size of for example, that dry maize, in the end of the day, this is going to be like a spike, you know. The cattle won't feed it because it's not digestible, you know. And with a Nogueira forage harvester, you can put it into a small size, like you can put, like, for example, 4 millimeters. So, and then the cow is going to eat independent of how dry it is or not. And the opposite thing also happens. For example, if you have something that is very green with too much humidity, okay, you can put a larger chopping size. So the thing is, your cattle is going to eat everything that you give them. You know, the machine is going to adapt the thing that you have to feed them, and is going to extract the more of the nutritional value, that it has. You know, and a part of this, with the row independent forage harvester, you can harvest different types of culture, which is, for example, sugarcane, elephant grass, maize, sorghum, and etc. So there is too much things that you can harvest with this machine and feed your animals.
Can you explain to us quickly about the rotating speed on the collecting drums? Mm-hmm. Why you would be able to adjust, and why you would want to adjust those rotating drums?
Excellent question. A part of the choosing the different chopping size, you also can choose the speed of the feeding drums. What basically it is? Let's suppose that you're gonna, for example, to harvest oat, which has a thin stem and a low density. Okay, so in this case you have to put more material inside of the machine. Okay, so thinking about it, you can increase the speeds of the drums, so without putting speed on the tractor, you're going to, instead of this, to increase the speed of the feeding drums. What it means that it goes to collect more material and put inside of the machine so it can be harvested, you know. So basically you can choose this, you can change the speed of the feeding, you know, and this helps you to save fuel. of the tractor, you know. Now the opposite example. Let's suppose that you're going to harvest, for example, the elephant grass or the sugarcane, which has a thick stem and a high density. So in this case, you can decrease the speed of the feeding drums. So as we know, some crops like this one, which has a high density, we don't need too much speed on the drums. Okay, so what it means that you can go slowly with the tractor, so it saves the fuel of the tractor. And also, just to add something more, all the forage harvester of Nogueira has, how can I say, a stone which is on the machine, a system with a stone on the machine, a sharpening stone, you know. Then you can sharp all the entire knives, you know, and it is going to do not let you force your tractor. So without forcing the tractor, you're going to have a good chopping size, you know, you're going to cut it well, and it will save the fuel of your tractor.
And then also good to notice is that the Nogueira forage harvesters come with a full set of interchangeable gears, especially for changing the speed on the rotor, on the feeding drums and on the rotor as well. What widths do the row independent forage harvesters come in?
Well, we have different sizes. As I said, we thought about the small scale farmer until the big scale farmer, you know. So basically we have the single row machine, which harvests one row at a time, you know. And when you start thinking about the row independent machine, we have different size of working widget, coming from 1 meter, 150 meter, 1.3 meter, 1.6 meter, 1.85 meter, 2.3 meter, and the bigger one, which is 2.5 meter of working widget.
That's a serious machine, the 2.5 meter one.
And also, just to add something, you can increase the production of per hour with the machine. For example, let's thinking about, for example, the FTN 1300, which has up to 48 tons per hour. But now let's thinking about a machine which is the FTN 1000 power. That machine has 1 meter of working widget and can harvest up to 35 tons per hour. That's a big production, isn't it? Yeah. And with this machine you can feed all of your cattle, okay? And also I'd like to talk, if you don't mind, about our storage division, you know. We have some machines here in the South African market, which is very important, you know, to what? To store the food of the animals, okay? Well, thinking about it, when we are on the green weather, like when it's raining, you know, we have food to feed our cattle. But what about the winter? Or what about the summer when everything is dry? Okay, thinking about it, you can store the food for your cattle in a bag, for example, using the silage. Okay, you can put all of this silage, all of this forage, which was pre-cutted by the forage harvester, and you can put inside a bag, and you can store it. And along the year, you have food to feed your cattle, so you won't be worried about it. So for the entire year, no matter if it's raining, if it's dry, if it's winter, you're going to have food to feed your cattle. Your animals is going to have the food to be, you know, fed, you know.
Yeah, and in these silage bags, in the silage bags, you can store the food up to 18 months. Can you maybe explain to us a little bit about the process of silage making? What happens in the silo bag when you've introduced the forage into the silage?
Excellent question. Excellent question. With the forage harvester, you are going to harvest your crop, okay? And you will cut into small size, and you even with our machine of Nogueira, you can crack this grain, okay? And when you put all of this material inside a bag, it starts to have a process which involves some bacteria, you know, and that bacteria is going to fermentate, okay, this material. And this material, it's known as silage, okay? So just to explain to you, basically when you cut, for example, maize, we are producing forage, we are cutting forage, okay? We are cutting, can be maize, can be sorghum, and etc. We are producing forage. When we put this material inside a bag, now we are producing the silage, which is the material that is the forage which is going to be fermented, okay? And when the end of this process, all of this material be fermented, it's going to be conserved, you know. So all of this process involve these bacteria, you know. If you want to, I can explain a little bit more about it. Okay, well, basically inside the grains we have some sugar, all right? And when you harvest this thing, for example, let's take as an example the maize, all right? When we harvest the maize, we crack the grains and chop the stem and the leaves of that plant and put inside the bag, all right? And our worst enemy is the oxygen, all right? Why? Because the oxygen, it's going to be the thing that can spoil your forage, all right? Your silage, sorry. Well, and thinking about it, we can add some inoculant to accelerate this process of fermentation.
Inoculant always necessary, or can you do it without the inoculant?
No, it is not necessary. It can be more good because it can decrease the time of fermentation. But good question. I want to talk a little bit more about it. When you put this material inside the bag, basically it starts a process which some aerobic bacteria start to eat all the sugar which is present inside the grain, all right? And this bacteria eating this sugar always needs to consume the oxygen, all right? Do you remember that the oxygen is our worst enemy, all right? That bacteria is going to start consuming the oxygen, consuming the sugar, and producing a lactic acid, all right? And after this process this bacteria dies, all right?
When the oxygen is finished, it dies.
Exactly. It consumes the oxygen and dies, all right? And when this bacteria dies, comes another type of bacteria, which is anaerobic bacteria. That bacteria do not need the oxygen, all right? That bacteria consumes the acid that was produced by the first bacteria, all right? And with this, it starts the process of fermentation, all right? After 21 days, all right, the process is totally complete, and you can storage for a long time that material. All right, and when you put inoculant on it, basically the inoculant is that first bacteria which consumes the oxygen, so we increase the volume of this bacteria, so it's going to eat as much oxygen as it can.
Okay, so that's basically to get rid of the oxygen faster, to have less spoilage.
Exactly. Exactly. And taking the oxygen, it's going to be easier, the process for the other bacteria to come in. So it is going to be more efficient. All right. And also, I'd like to talk about another thing. I talked about, for example, the silo log. To produces the bags, you know, and to storage the silage so it can consume along the year. And also, I'd like to tell you something about the silo log. once you have the machine, you can produce various, a lot of bags. With just one machine, you can store too much material. All right, and well, a part of this, I talked to you about to storage the forage. All right, we have another type of machine, which is a NSG 9200.
But that's on the grain side. I'd like to just finish up a little bit on the silage side for that. What are the advantages of feeding silage compared to feeding the fodder?
Okay, very good question. It is more the important thing to think about the nutritional value of the food. All right. When you produce the silage, when you put inside the bag with some grain, etc., this is going to fermentate. All right, and it can be stored for a long time. So you can consume it, and also there is a market for this. Let's suppose that you have a small area. All right, then you cannot plant anything, but you have some animals. Your animals need to eat. All right, you can buy it for your neighbor. So he has some area that he can plant, he can storage, and he can sell for you. In Brazil, there are some farmers who has lots of animals but do not have any planted in his property. And this farmer normally buys about the other ones which has too much animals but do not have space to plant. There is a market on it. So you having one machine like this one, you can also produce for your own consumption, and also you can sell it. There's a big market for silage.
Yeah.
No.
How much are you able to store in these silo bags, or the silage bags actually? The Silage uses a 6-foot bag or a 1.8 meter diameter bag, right?
Exactly. It is a 6-foot bag, and also there are different types of bag length. Okay, so for example, 60 meter, and it's up to 150. I think there are many types on the market, but let's talk, for example, the 60 meter with 6 feet. Like you can storage up, for example, 200 tons, for example, in one bag like this. So it's too much food, isn't it? So you can consume it along the year, or you can sell. That's the main point.
The finer you cut, the more compaction you have, the more you can get into the bag. Is that correct?
Exactly.
So the finer you cut, it costs a little bit more energy, but you can store more in the bags.
Exactly. That's true.